All right, strap yourselves in, because today we are diving deep into some seriously heavy stuff with Requiem for a Dream.
Ooh, intense.
Yeah, a film known for its raw look at addiction, but, uh, you know,
There's always more. Yeah.
so much more. We're going way past just like what happened in the movie
Right.
to figure out why it's considered, like a masterpiece
Mm.
and how it just like gets under your skin, in this really powerful but kind of unsettling way.
Yeah. It's effective, but definitely not always a comfortable watch.
Right. And our guides for this deep dive are Max and Riley, the hosts of the Deep Dive Cinema podcast, who just did an amazing breakdown of this film.
They're great. Really insightful analysis.
Yeah. So Requiem for a Dream, it's not just about addiction.
No, it's really using addiction as a way to explore these just bigger, more complex themes, I think.
Mm.
Like desperation, the allure of the American dream, but then also like the disillusionment that comes with it,
Yeah.
fragility of hope, all that's like woven into the film.
And it's interesting you say American Dream because right from the start, we see that play out, sometimes in like really twisted ways with each character.
Yeah, definitely not your typical go-get-'em American dream story.
Yeah.
Like, take Sarah Goldfarb,
Yeah.
addicted to diet pills. But it's not just about the pills themselves, right? It
Right.
comes from this deeper yearning for significance.
Mm.
Battling loneliness. She wants to be on TV, escape her everyday life.
Escape the mundane.
And that scene with the red dress,
Yeah.
where she's like picturing herself as vibrant and admired.
Oh, yeah.
Such a, it's poignant. It really captures how much she longs for that self-worth that she feels like she's lost.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking because we know that her way of getting that dream through the pills leads to like her complete downfall.
It does.
And Ellen Burstyn,
Oh my God.
her performance, wow.
Phenomenal.
Max and Riley both were just like floored by how she transformed herself and her dedication to the role.
She completely embodies Sarah's decline. Like you could see it in her eyes, the desperation, how addiction just strips away her dignity.
Yeah.
And she really went all in on researching this, talking to women who'd been through amphetamine addiction, reading letters from their families. It's heavy stuff.
Wow.
I think that commitment to making it real is a huge part of why the film feels so raw and disturbing.
Then you've got Harry, Tyrone, and Marion, all chasing a different kind of American dream, right? Financial success, but through dealing drugs.
Right, right. And at first, their ambition, it's almost contagious. Like you kind of get swept up in it.
Yeah, yeah.
But then things go downhill so fast.
Yeah.
And it's tragic, I think, because you see these glimpses of what they really want, like connection, love, a better life. Harry wants to be with Marion, build a future, but their love story, it gets completely overtaken by their addiction.
Yeah.
And Marion, she wants to be a fashion designer,
Mm.
but she ends up in this just horrific situation as the addiction takes over.
Yeah, and Riley in the podcast really focused on Marion's story, how Aronofsky's directing visually like shows her falling apart.
Oh yeah, the quick cuts, the close-ups, like right in their faces, those weird camera angles.
Yeah.
He's mirroring their inner state.
Yeah.
It's so effective. You don't just watch them fall apart. You're like right there with them.
Yeah.
It's almost claustrophobic.
And the editing style, too.
Yeah.
That really stands out. Like, so frantic.
It's like being stuck in a washing machine.
Yeah, yeah, going round and round.
Exactly. And it's not just stylistic, right? That frantic editing, the split screens he uses, those jarring hip-hop montages, it all emphasizes how cyclical, how inescapable addiction can be.
Mm.
You get trapped in this loop with them, going through those highs and the just crushing lows.
Yeah, yeah.
It's brilliant, but man, unsettling.
Not a passive viewing experience.
Not at all. You're confronted with the rawness of it.
Mm.
And I think that's what makes it so impactful.
Did Max and Riley talk about how they felt watching it?
This is the kind of film that stays with you.
Mm.
Doesn't try to make addiction look good.
Right.
Just hits you with these harsh, uncomfortable truths about, I don't know, being human. The price of chasing the wrong dreams.
Yeah.
And how society sometimes traps people in these cycles.
It's not just about their choices, right? It's the systems that fail people.
Exactly. The lack of opportunity, the desperation that fuels those bad choices.
And we see that, like, especially with Tyrone's character.
Absolutely.
He's trying so hard to make something of himself.
He is.
But it's like he keeps hitting a wall.
Yeah. And his addiction, it comes as much from society failing him as it does from his own choices.
It's really layered, going beyond the surface. Now, we got to talk about the music. Clint Mansell's score, incredible. That Lux Eterna track,
Oh, man, yeah.
haunting, almost apocalyptic, and just captures the whole mood of the film perfectly.
I think Lux Eterna is, like, as iconic as the film itself at this
Yeah.
point. It's been used everywhere. Trailers, commercials, other films. It just shows how effective he was at creating this sound that just intensifies the emotion of every scene.
Yeah. Like, the music is a character,
Totally.
foreshadowing their downfall.
Yeah.
It's like almost operatic tragedy. I read somewhere Mansell was inspired by like the repetitive, hypnotic quality of techno music.
Hmm.
And you can hear that in
Mhm.
the score. Adds to that feeling of being trapped, just like the editing does.
Yeah, it's so effective. And the repetition, both in the editing and the music, it reflects the repetition of addiction itself.
Right.
It's just this constant cycle of craving, getting high, then crashing. And the film, it really throws you into that experience.
And speaking of crashing, we can't avoid the ending.
Mhm.
Bleak, unforgettable, and just brutal in showing how bad the consequences of addiction can be.
It is one of those gut-wrenching endings, I think, ever.
Ah,
Each character hits rock bottom. Sarah in the psych ward,
yeah,
Harry hospitalized,
Tyrone.
alone in jail, and Marion just trapped in that awful cycle of exploitation.
And there's no happy ending, no easy way out. Aronofsky makes us confront that devastation,
He does.
which, like
Yeah.
you said, is what makes it so powerful. It just stays with you. Did Max and Riley talk about the ending?
They had a really interesting discussion about it. Some critics see it as a warning, like this is what happens when you chase empty dreams and try to escape through drugs.
Right.
But others, they say it's actually a requiem for a society that lets these cycles of addiction and despair just keep going.
So it's not just about personal choices, it's about the bigger picture.
Yeah, the social context, systemic issues, lack of opportunity that can lead to these tragedies.
Wow, that's a really interesting way to look at it. It's not just pointing fingers at the individuals,
Right.
it's looking at the bigger forces at play.
Exactly. And that's what keeps it relevant even today. We're still dealing with the opioid epidemic, social inequality, people searching for meaning in a world that can feel really isolating. Requiem for a Dream. It holds up a mirror to those issues, makes us face uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world.
And it does it in such a visceral way. The realism is just undeniable. We talked about Burstyn's prep, but Jared Leto, who plays Harry, he went to extremes too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Significant weight loss, living on the streets to experience homelessness firsthand, even gave up sugar for months to understand those cravings.
Wow.
And then Aronofsky took it even further. He hired former addicts as extras.
Really?
Yeah, adds this layer of authenticity you just can't fake.
That's, wow. That's commitment to realism you don't see every day. It's no wonder this film has had such a huge impact, not just on viewers, but like other filmmakers.
It demands your attention, challenges your perceptions, and it definitely doesn't let you off easy.
No.
And maybe it doesn't offer any clear solutions, but it makes you engage with these tough issues.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it a masterpiece.
Before we go to part 2 of this deep dive, I want to touch on one thing Max and Riley talked about that really got me thinking. They mentioned how Aronofsky almost had all 4 characters together in a final scene,
Yeah.
but he didn't do it.
Nope.
Kept their stories separate, ending with that really haunting montage of each of them alone in their despair.
Powerful choice.
It just emphasizes their isolation. Even though they started with these shared dreams, they're ultimately alone in their struggles.
It does. Adds another layer to the film's exploration of addiction and how it isolates people.
It's a powerful message, and I think it really resonates with viewers. Well, that brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive into Requiem for a Dream. We've explored the characters, the themes, the way it's filmed, that devastating ending.
A lot to unpack.
What can our listeners expect in part 2?
When we come back, we'll get into some of the behind-the-scenes stories from making the film. And we'll explore how Requiem for a Dream has influenced other filmmakers and artists.
Awesome. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with part 2 of our deep dive into Requiem for a Dream.
Welcome back. We were just talking about those powerful performances and that ending. Man, it really gets under your skin.
It does. And like that intensity, that feeling of being right there as they're falling apart,
Yeah.
it comes from how real Aronofsky made everything.
Right. And we talked about Jared Leto's method acting, but remember how Max and Riley brought up that Aronofsky used actual former addicts as extras?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Wow. Talk about commitment to portraying addiction authentically.
It's not just telling the story, it's like showing the truth, no filter.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how much thought goes into every little thing in a film. the
Yeah.
casting, how these choices can make a film so much more powerful, resonate on a deeper level.
It's not just entertainment, it's reflecting real struggles.
Yeah,
And like it makes you think about the choices they make, the things that push them towards those choices, and how sometimes the line between right and wrong gets blurry.
that's a good point. It's not about judging these characters. It's about understanding how complicated their situations are,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure they're under, the desperation that can make them do things they wouldn't normally do.
Speaking of complex, Max and Riley mentioned some interesting interpretations of the ending.
Oh, yeah.
They did. Some critics see it as a straight up warning, like, don't chase empty dreams, don't escape through drugs.
Right.
But others went deeper, saying it's like a requiem for a society that allows addiction and despair to just keep happening. So it's not just about personal responsibility, it's about like the bigger systems at play.
Yeah, exactly. Poverty, lack of opportunity, systems failing people, leaving them vulnerable.
It's a much bigger critique.
It is. It's not just about saying, hey, make better choices.
Right.
It's about understanding the root causes, the systemic issues that let these problems grow.
And that makes it so relevant today,
Oh, absolutely.
We're still dealing with the opioid crisis, inequality, isolation. It's like the film knew what challenges we'd be facing.
It's kind of prophetic in
Yeah.
a way. And it speaks to, I think, Aronofsky's ability to capture these universal truths about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
The search for meaning, wanting connection, and how fragile hope can be in a world that feels so messed up sometimes.
Yeah. And that's where the title Requiem for a Dream comes in.
Right.
Max and Riley said it's open to like multiple meanings.
Yeah.
It's not just a title, it's a question.
It is. It's brilliantly ambiguous.
Hmm.
Requiem usually means a piece of music for the dead, a lament for something lost.
Mhm.
But here it makes you ask, what are we mourning?
Yeah, what is it? Is it their individual dreams, their hopes for a good future, or is it something bigger like innocence lost, the death of the American dream?
Or maybe, like some critics say, it's for a society that's lost its way, one that's failed to protect the people who need it most and just let them fall through the cracks.
It's a title that makes you think even after the film ends.
It does.
It doesn't give you a simple answer. It wants you to grapple with these questions.
And that's what great art does.
Hmm.
It doesn't preach. It provokes.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't offer easy solutions. It challenges you to deal with the difficult realities and see how complicated these issues are.
Yeah, it's not about giving you the answers.
No.
It's about starting a conversation, encouraging you to think for yourself and come to your own conclusions.
Exactly. And in that way, Requiem for a Dream, it's more than just a film. It's a cultural thing, something that sparks discussion and makes you look inward.
It's had a big influence on other filmmakers too,
Oh,
right?
Huge. It's like it opened up this new way to show these tough subjects, honestly, with this raw realism.
You can see it in other films.
Oh, totally. You see echoes of Requiem in films like Enter the Void, with its visuals, and Sicario, with its look at the drug trade. It pushed boundaries and inspired others to do the same.
It's a testament to how powerful it is,
Yeah.
It doesn't just affect viewers, it changes cinema itself.
Yeah.
And people are still studying it, analyzing it, debating it.
They are. It's that relevant.
And its influence goes beyond film, too. Think about how Lux Eterna has become this, iconic piece of music used everywhere. Trailers, commercials, video games, everything.
It evokes this mood, a feeling of impending doom.
Yeah.
Super effective at making other media hit harder emotionally.
It's wild how a film's influence can spread, It impacts visuals, music, it becomes part of our culture.
It does. And that shows the power of art to break boundaries, I think,
Yeah.
and become a shared experience, something that connects with people across different mediums, different generations.
And even though it came out over 20 years ago, Requiem for a Dream is still relevant,
Oh, for sure.
especially now, with everything going on in the world.
Yeah. Addiction, isolation, chasing those fleeting dreams, it's all still so relevant.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it such a powerful, lasting film. It gets these universal human experiences, these things that go beyond time and place.
It's a film that stays with you.
It does.
Makes you think about your own life, your choices, the world around you. And it may not give you easy answers, comforting solutions.
No.
But it gives you something much more valuable, a chance to really engage with these complex ideas and face those hard truths.
It challenges you to think critically,
Yeah.
to empathize with people who are struggling,
Yeah.
and to think about how we can create a world that's more fair and compassionate.
And it does all that with incredible artistry.
Oh, yeah.
The performances, the music, Aronofsky's directing, the overall bleak but unforgettable tone.
Grabs your attention,
Right.
makes you question everything you thought you knew, and you're just changed after watching it. It's not a
Hmm.
passive thing. It's like actively engaging with the dark side of what it means to be human.
Before we move on to the last part of this deep dive, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
That idea of Requiem for a Dream being like social commentary.
Yeah, it goes beyond the individual. It's a
Mm.
critique of the systems
Right.
that keep these cycles of despair going.
We see it in how the characters are trapped
We do.
by their circumstances, poverty, lack of opportunity, the pressures that push them towards bad choices.
Yeah, and it's not about blaming anyone. It's about understanding how those bigger forces shape lives and contribute to the problems we see on screen.
Acknowledging the system failing,
Mhm.
the lack of support, the way society just doesn't care sometimes, leading to these tragedies. And that's a message that hits hard today.
It does. Because these issues are even more widespread now.
It's a film that wants us to look beyond the individual to think about the bigger context.
It does. It makes us question our assumptions, our biases, the ways we might be contributing to these systems without even realizing it.
It's a call to action, a plea for empathy, and a reminder that we all have a responsibility to create a world where dreams aren't crushed, where they can actually come true.
And it reminds us that these issues are so complex with no easy answers. And it takes all of us working together to make a real difference.
It's not just about watching a movie. It's about engaging with the ideas, having those tough conversations, and building a future where everyone has a chance.
It's about realizing these problems don't exist in isolation. They're all connected, rooted in systemic issues.
Right.
And it takes collective action, a change in what we value as a society, to fix them.
It's about going beyond just blaming individuals and realizing we all play a part in building a world where everyone can thrive.
Where dreams aren't just fantasies, but something real. And that's the message Requiem for a Dream sends, with honesty, unflinching realism, and this haunting beauty that sticks with you.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive into Requiem for a Dream. We've explored its impact on cinema, its social message, and how relevant it still is today.
We've gone deep into the character struggles, the music, that powerful ending, and all the different ways people have interpreted it.
And when we come back for the final part, we'll dig into some of those critical interpretations and discuss the legacy of this film, how it's affected cinema and viewers like us.
We'll also leave you with some final thoughts and questions to think about as you keep wrestling with this complex, powerful film.
So stay tuned for the conclusion of our deep dive. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Requiem for a Dream.
We've really gone deep, haven't we? The filmmaking, the score, those performances, the social commentary. It's a lot.
It is a lot to process.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious, what about the critics? Like, how have they interpreted this film? Max and Riley mentioned a few different takes, but I'm wondering what other readings have stood out to you.
You know, it's fascinating how Requiem for a Dream has been looked at through so many lenses. Some critics, they zero in on the destructive nature of addiction,
Right.
focusing on the physical and psychological effects, how it takes over. They point to the film's visuals, how graphic and unflinching they are, almost like a shock tactic to wake people up to the reality of addiction.
It's definitely not shying away from the consequences.
No, not at all. It's not glamorous, not romanticized. It's raw, painful to watch at times.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's deliberate. Aronofsky's not interested in making it easy to watch. He wants us to feel it. The weight of addiction, the desperation, the loss of control. And some critics, they see this as like a powerful way to raise awareness and get people to empathize with those struggling.
It makes sense. It's not just telling a story. It's making you feel something you might want to avoid otherwise.
Right. But then some critics, they go beyond the individual experience. They see the film as a bigger social critique, a commentary on the systems that keep poverty, despair, and addiction going.
Yeah, we touched on that, how it's not just about the choices people make. It's about the lack of opportunities, the pressure from society, those systemic failures.
Exactly. And some even draw parallels between the characters chasing their dreams and, well, the emptiness of consumer culture. They say the film shows how hollow the American dream can be, like how chasing material success can leave you spiritually bankrupt.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you see with each character how their dreams get twisted and lead to their downfall. Sarah and her obsession with TV and fame. Right. Harry, Tyrone, and Marion wanting wealth through drug dealing. It all ends up being empty, destructive.
It does. And there's this sense of disillusionment that runs through the whole film.
Yeah.
It's like they're chasing something that will never truly satisfy them. And
Mm.
some critics say this reflects a broader societal thing, a sense of alienation, being disconnected,
Hmm.
that we see a lot in modern society.
It definitely taps into that anxiety we feel today, being trapped in a system that doesn't value real connection or genuine happiness.
Absolutely. And even though it was made over 20 years ago, it feels so relevant now.
Yeah.
Maybe even more so with social media, the constant news cycle, the pressure to achieve.
It's like it predicted the challenges we'd face. That feeling of isolation, the pressure to fit in, chasing those fleeting pleasures that just leave you feeling emptier.
Right. And in that way,
Mm.
Requiem for a Dream, it's more than just about addiction.
Yeah.
It's a warning about chasing the wrong dreams,
Mhm.
about how important human connection really is,
Yeah.
and the need for a society that's more compassionate and fair.
It's a film that makes you look inside yourself.
It does.
Examine your own values, what's important to you, and think about how we can create a world where people aren't so desperate for meaning that they make these choices.
It's a powerful message. And I think what makes it such a lasting work of art, it's not just entertainment. It's a challenge, a provocation, a call to action.
It stays with you.
It does, long after the credits roll.
Yeah.
Makes you think about your life, your choices, the world around you.
It reminds us that we have a choice. We can sit back and watch, or we can do something. Engage with these issues, challenge the way things are, and try to build a better future.
Yeah, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's always hope, redemption, the possibility of finding connection and meaning in a world that can feel so isolating.
And it shows just how powerful art can be, to inspire change, to get people talking, to remind us that we're all human.
It is.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into Requiem for a Dream. It's been intense, thought-provoking. We've explored the filmmaking, the social messages, how relevant it is even today.
We've looked at the characters, the music, that ending, and all the ways people have interpreted it.
And before we go, we want to leave you with something to think about, a question that goes beyond what we've discussed. So here it is. What's the real answer to the despair and disillusionment that this film shows us?
Is it just willpower, making different choices? Or do we need to change our values as a society? Put more emphasis on compassion, empathy, supporting those who are struggling.
There aren't any easy answers, but Requiem for a Dream makes us confront these questions.
It does.
It forces us to look at our own beliefs, to see how we might be part of the problem, and think about how we can create a world where dreams have a chance, where hope is possible.
A world where dreams are nurtured, not destroyed, and where hope is given a fighting chance. If you haven't seen Requiem for a Dream, we really encourage you to watch it. Just be ready for an intense, unforgettable experience.
Yeah, it's a powerful film. And even if you've seen it, we hope this deep dive has given you some new things to think about, new ways to understand this amazing work of art. Thanks for joining us on this journey into Requiem for a Dream.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you'll keep exploring the world of cinema with us as we dive into more thought-provoking and impactful films